Let's talk about a little bit of domestic politics here. Some extraordinary comments from our current president, Joe Biden, about why exactly he is running for re-election again, in spite of the fact that his approval ratings are really low and no one really wants him to run again, including Democrats. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
Would you be running for president if Trump wasn't running?
I expect so, but look, he is running, and I have to run.
If you drop out, if Trump runs out?
No, not now.
So he's saying, you know, if Trump wasn't running, maybe he wouldn't run.
Yeah.
What?
And he also, Krystal said that to donors behind this. It drives me absolutely insane how he drops all of these nuggets to donors that then leak out as quotes, and then he tries to walk them back. When it's like, when we all know the way that he's speaking freely amongst donors is what he actually thinks.
Correct.
That's whenever he said that we were on the brink of nuclear war. I forget, he made another comment too, which was like worldwide consequential to these donors. It's an outrageous practice by the president.
Think about the level of disconnect. Think about the bubble you have to be in to look at your approval rating, which is in the 30s, to look at poll after poll coming out that says you're losing to the dude that people also overwhelmingly hate and who has been indicted multiple times. You're losing to him in basically every swing state and every national head-to-head at this point. And you're saying this is the reason why you're holding on and why you're gonna run again? Like, just your level of delusion at that point is insane. So, and if he really, you know, if he really is just committed to defeating Donald Trump, then why not have a democratic primary process where people have a chance to evaluate whether they think you're the best guy or whether they think somebody else is the best guy? But no, he's terrified of that because he knows he is not fit to actually go up on a debate stage against anyone. And yet he thinks he can beat Donald Trump, who, you know, for whatever you think about him, is certainly a skilled political performer. And in spite of his advanced age, certainly seems to have a lot more sort of on the ball and certainly a lot more energetically than Joe Biden does. It's just amazing to me, the delusion and the bubble that these people live in.
Yep, that's incredibly well said, Krystal. And it's just one of those where it's almost too on the nose, because that is an admission. He's like, I wouldn't be running if, well, then you're not affirmatively running on anything. And it just, again, highlights the negativity, the negative effect of American politics.
Yeah.
Where everybody is running for, everybody is running basically against something. There's no positive reason.
It's all negative partisanship.
At the same time, that's the smartest thing he could say, right? 2/3 of the people who voted for Joe Biden voted because he wasn't named Donald Trump. That's it, period, end of story. And it's one of those where now Trump and Biden do really need each other in many respects, because Trump also loves to play off of this liberal hysteria of who think of him as like some grand Mussolini-style dictator, when in reality he's more like Selena Meyer from Veep whenever he was in office. He both likes to play into the dictatorship meme, and then the Biden campaign is like, no, see, that's why we have to run against him, because of the big bad Trump. He actually addressed some of this in a town hall with Sean Hannity. Let's take a listen.
I want to go back to this one issue, though, because the media has been focused on this and attacking you. Under no circumstances. You are promising America tonight you would never abuse power as retribution against anybody.
Except for day one.
Except
Look,
what?
he's going crazy. Except for day one.
Meaning?
I want to close the border and I want to drill.
That's not retribution. I'm
gonna be, you know, he keeps, we love this guy. He says, you're not gonna be a dictator, are you? I said, no, other than day one. We're closing the border and we're drilling. After that, I'm not a dictator,
so that sounds to me like you're going back to the policies when you were president.
Why does Hannity keep trying to clean up his answer? It's like, what are you, his press secretary?
Yes, the answer is yes.
Let the man speak. He knows exactly what he's doing, okay? He knows he's about to trigger Biden and he's going to trigger the liberals. He can read the New York Times op-eds and the Atlantic op-eds as much as anybody, and he obviously gets a kick out of it. So I thought Hannity, the way he conducts himself is just so ridiculous. But I actually thought putting those two things together, Krystal, does demonstrate how both of these like industrial complexes need each other. Trump needs to trigger, you know, the so-called liberal hysteria, the idea that he's going to be some insane dictator, and then Biden needs those Atlantic headlines like Bob Kagan, I don't know if you saw this, wrote this long thing about American democracy is under attack, which, you know, given Bob Kagan's track record, that means he wants to invade it. But that's what the Biden campaign is then immediately fundraising off of. And I don't know if you saw this, there's a new whole Atlantic series of articles about the dangers of what a second Trump administration would look like. And they're all just complete like old style 2016, almost like claptrap. The only one I do think is legitimate is on the criticism of election and January 6th. Okay, 100%. The rest of them, it's like, yeah, the guy who literally could get nothing done for his first 4 years has miraculously changed and transformed in his old age and is now going to be the most effective, GOP dictatorship president in history. It's like, what are we talking about here?
I think two things can be true. One, that he's a cartoonish buffoon and Keystone Cops, Veep, whatever you want to say. Yes. And also that there is a genuine danger because of what we saw unfold with the fake electors and with January 6th, et cetera. I mean, that was a genuinely destabilizing moment. He genuinely wanted to hold on to power even though he'd lost. And that is genuinely dangerous. So I can't look at what unfolded there, and especially what we've learned about all the machinations happening behind the scene, all the fake electors who'd been polled and the slates created and all of this that was going on, and just sort of like hand wave away all of the concerns about Trump. Now, on the other hand, liberals do themselves no favor when they're trying to pretend like they're all about democracy while they're actively behaving like authoritarians, like in the state of Florida, where they just decided we're going to make Joe Biden the nominee and we're not even going to have a process. Like, you can't end democracy to save democracy. It doesn't work that way. And so, when I look at that Hannity-Trump exchange, there's a few things. First of all, Hannity clearly hands him the softball, and he does it twice, by the way. He asks him once, he's like, "You're not gonna be a dictator, are you?" And Trump dodges and says, "Oh, you mean like the way that they were towards me?" And then what we showed now is he comes back around and is like, no, I just want to make it clear you're not going to be a dictator. And Trump's like, well, after day one, right? The audience loves it. Why? Not because they just think he's joking, but because there's a genuine desire for authoritarianism and for a dictator in the American public. And it's not surprising. It's not surprising for a couple of reasons. Number one, because in times of tumult and chaos, the instinct towards or desire for a sort of like daddy figure who's going to make it all better. And I'm not even talking partisan at this point. I'm just talking blanket statements about the American public at this point. There is always a consistent rise in desire for dictatorship, authoritarianism, some daddy figure to just come in and do the things that you think need to be done, get it done, trains run on time, et cetera, et cetera. That is a consistent theme throughout history. And number two, you've had for years now cynical operators in the news media and cynical political operators, cynical pundits, cynical elite class members who think that the best thing that they could do is to convince one half of the country that the other half of the country is truly evil, demented, and an existential risk to them. Do you think democracy is going to thrive in such a circumstance? You can only have democracy thrive when you accept that your brothers and sisters that you're in this project with are basically good people who are trying to figure these things out, and you may have some fundamental differences with them. That's fine. You'll work it out. But they're not an existential threat to you, your family, your way of life. And so that's why on the Republican side, when Trump says things like, oh, I'll be a dictator on day one, he's giving a large chunk of the base what they want to hear. They're not upset about this. They want him to be that strongman and do the things and protect them in the way that they feel they need to be protected. And that's why on the Democratic side, there's very limited outcry when they do things like, just decide in Florida that it's going to be Joe Biden, or when they tell people that we can't afford to have a primary process, we have to subvert democracy to save democracy. Why there's very little outcry, because people feel that same sense of existential dread on the Democratic side as well. So that's what I see going on.
I think you're right. And I think the reason I get so angry about this, dictatorship and all this, is because to me, it's actually anti-democratic in that why is Trump beating Biden? Let's actually look at the polls. It has nothing to do with democracy or any of this. People are pissed and angry about the economy. So if you believe Trump is a threat and a dictator, then you need to beat him on an economic answer for why people should vote for you as opposed to him. And I have seen nothing but an onslaught from the Democratic press, from the liberal establishment, absent very, very few examples, people like Jeff Stein and others who are honest, who are not like, well, why are these idiot voters complaining prices are, I just saw a Financial Times piece, I'm not sure if you saw that, where they ridiculed American voters for thinking that prices were higher today than they were in 2022. And they were like, well, see, inflation is fake. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, it might be marginally true, but zoom out. From 2019 to 2023, inflation is running 22.3%. That is 3 times higher than inflation from 2015 to 2019. So when people are saying prices are too high, they don't mean prices are too high in 2023, prices are higher 2023 over 2022. They feel that way because everyone remembers what a bag of groceries cost not that long ago. And they didn't have that amount of inflation in their lives for decades, as opposed to the fast pace that we've seen under the Biden administration. Now, it's not all Joe Biden's fault. I think a lot of it is. But the point is that if you cannot address and speak to that, you're going to lose. And that's what actual democracy looks like. So for me, it's all of this trying to browbeat people over the head about trying to gin them up and be afraid is just as bad on that other side when they're not actually trying to engage in a small d democratic argument over why you should vote for them. People are not stupid. The main reason that a lot of people are gravitating towards Trump on the economy right now is just comparison. They're like, well, in 2019, gas was X, Y, and Z. He's also got the great talking point of there was no Russia, Ukraine, or Israel or whatever while I was president. And that's a compelling pitch, especially if you don't have something to fill the vacuum, which Biden does not. I mean, when's the last time he even did anything about this? Yeah, nothing.
He said something about price gouging recently.
The guy cares more about Israel than he does about inflation.
That's the closest you could come.
Yeah.
Well, to me, there's 3 major factors. There's the economy, as you point out, and the fact that, people actually had more money in their bank accounts during COVID when you had all of these social safety net programs that were genuinely helping people in the child tax credit and checks coming in, et cetera. Under this Democratic president, those programs have all been stripped away. So at the same time you have inflation, you have a diminished ability to, to survive that inflation, be able to pay for the things that you need to pay for, and people racking up massive credit card bills, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one piece. Second piece is just you look at the guy and you're like,
yeah, that's a massive part.
Can you make it through 4 years? Like, I'm struggling to listen to you put a single sentence together. Like, I'm holding my breath, hoping you get to the end of this thing and it's not a catastrophe. How are we going to do 4 more years like this? That's one piece. And then the latest piece, the reason you've seen a huge deterioration recently is because of disenchantment with the Democratic base over his unconditional support for Israel, which has really hit key Democratic voting blocs. Young people, first and foremost, Arab Americans, Muslim Americans, people of color in general actually have a very different view of this conflict than most white voters, just judging by the polling. These are key Democratic-based groups. And so the recent decline for Biden has actually been mostly among Democrats who are very unhappy with what's going on. Now, are they going to vote for Donald Trump? No. Are they going to stay home? Very possible. They're betting that going back to the well of Trump is terrible, Trump is bad, and you cannot vote for Donald Trump, and staying home is a vote for Donald Trump, shaming, cajoling voters is gonna work another time. And I'm just not so sure that it is. I could be wrong. But I think, like you said, Saagar, you have to actually make an affirmative case at this point for why 4 more years of you and your program and what you're gonna do is gonna leave people better off. Because, people look back at the Trump years and they're like, yeah, that was chaotic and it wasn't great and it was terrible, but we survived. We got to the other side of it. So maybe all of this is not as extraordinarily existential as it seems. So in any case, speaking of delusions, Liz Cheney has also decided that perhaps she will throw her hat into the ring, the presidential ring, and make her own bid for president. Let's take a listen to how she explained that.
Whatever you do, whatever you think about, the possibilities that Donald Trump might present, he's not an acceptable option. He's not an acceptable alternative. I hope that he is defeated in the primary, but if he's not, we have to defeat him in the general. And people need to take seriously and literally what he's saying, which is that he would, in fact, unravel our democracy, potentially terminate the Constitution. It's a risk we can't take.
So she's saying that she may run for president to help defeat Trump. And when you talk about, Biden's level of delusion doesn't even compare to this level of delusion. Yes. Because even though it shouldn't be this way, because Trump has become the central question in American politics, the fact that Liz Cheney has put herself on the anti-Trump side of the equation means that her favorability ratings are entirely on the Democratic side. She has very few Republican supporters left, which is why she left Congress. So the idea that she would take more from Trump than from Biden if she were to run for president is
Patently absurd.
Completely preposterous.
I say
Absolutely
she should run.
preposterous.
I want more. I want as many people in this thing as possible.
Chaos,
This needs to
man.
be full-blown, like 1807 election, all this other stuff. It might finally destroy some of the vestiges of the establishments that remain. I don't know. I mean, this level of delusion is one I almost genuinely admire. I think my life would be a lot easier if I was that delusional and less neurotic, I guess. This is one, too, where I do think it highlights, as Biden gets weaker, the chaos element of the no labels type candidates.
Yeah.
People are already floating Nikki Haley against Trump for no labels. Now we could have Liz Cheney versus Nikki Haley for no labels. Joe Manchin is doing whatever the hell Joe Manchin is doing out there. Joe Lieberman and all these people are not screwing around. They really could actually mount somebody. Then you've got RFK Jr., who will be, I mean, who knows how much bigger he could get. You've got Cornel West, who's still hanging out there. And especially for people like RFK Jr., he says he's going to get on the ballot in all 50 states. It's a serious problem for both of these candidates. And you throw in a no labels person like that, who has just so much money and could easily get the petitions. Now you're going to have 4, almost 5 people on the presidential ballot. That's extraordinary. Not to mention the libertarian candidate,
Right.
who will probably be there as well.
The only one of those candidates you mentioned that could take more from Trump than Biden is RFK Jr.
Yes.
And I think it's a real toss-up. And the polls seem to show that it's kind of a toss-up, that it's relatively split between the two of them. I think it depends on who he picks as Veep, what he focuses on, how effective the Fox News hatchet job against him is at this point. Because man, they turned on a dime. They used to be pumping this guy up like crazy, and now every time he goes on, they've definitely got their knives out for him. So they want to convince everybody that he's, really truly a Hillary Clinton loving liberal and using whatever they can to make that case. Of course, a lot of his focuses in recent years have aligned more with Republicans and more with the GOP base, which is why people like Steve Bannon were building him up for so long when he was an effective cudgel against Joe Biden. So with him, I think it's kind of a toss-up where he draws more from. I think it could potentially be that he takes more from Trump at this point, but hard to say. All of the other ones, Liz Cheney, Joe Manchin, Cornel West, Jill Stein, et cetera, definitely draw more from Biden than from Trump. And so it just further complicates his reelection path, which was already very complicated. Yep. I think you're right, too, Saagar, that the more that we see him decline, the more that opens the door for just total chaos. Because people I don't think Mark Cuban actually is going to run, even though I kind of wish that he would. But people like him who have huge name ID, who have lots of money to spend, et cetera, they got to be looking at this thing and going, you know what? It wouldn't take that much. I actually think I could have a shot at this thing. Everybody hates these two dudes. If I jump in there and mix it up, you never know. It might only take 30% of the vote to be able to win this thing outright.
Hey, I'll say this too. The Rock has been making a lot of appearances here in Washington. Yesterday, he put out a whole video. He was at the Pentagon. He's been on Capitol Hill twice in the last month. Nobody actually really knows what he's doing, why he's receiving classified briefings at the Pentagon. So
that's weird.
He also, on Joe Rogan, he said, people have approached me to run for president in one of the two major parties. I'm not sure how true that is, but at the very least, he's floating it. He's floating something out there. So it could be any one of these people could do it. I think The Rock would cream Joe Biden in a primary, just to be clear. But anyway, we'll see.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.